People already line up. Boom. I think we're live. Let me check. Oh yeah, we're live. What's up, everybody? What's up, chat? We're back here, the fourth episode of Splitting Atoms, where we talk all things the Cosmos Hub, Atom, and also obviously how other projects in the ecosystems play a role in that. But primarily, this show is actually there to like talk about the Cosmos Hub and Atom, and we have always great guests here from the ecosystem, core builders, core developers, core infrastructure. Today we got Greg Osuri here, who doesn't need an introduction. Like you guys all know him. Like he's from the Akash network, and that's a very interesting projects because they decentralize the computing layer, which is something that plays a big role that people probably don't even see at a first glance when they think about crypto and blockchain, right? We all get distracted by the meme coins and all these kind of things. But now in that broader context, I thought we can pivot today's show about a little bit like how decentralized Cosmos actually is as an entire project. And I don't know where this conversation is going, but I think we have three absolute legends in the Cosmos ecosystem. So yeah, Jack, the co-host, also on board. How's everything going?
Good, man. You know, it's a gorgeous, warmish winter day here in California. Yeah, you know, decentralization is, I think, something that gets a lot of people into blockchain, but there are a few other ecosystems that sort of have, walk the walk, walk the talk, I guess, in the same way that Cosmos does. You know, from the compute layer with Greg and what they're working on with Osmosis right now, to the development teams on the Cosmos Hub and other projects like Sommelier, to the validator sets. Cosmos is really focused at every layer of the stack on decentralization. And I think that, there's a lot of discussion around the sort of negatives of decentralization, but I think that Cosmos is a great example of how that decentralization can be really positive and help drive forward the product in a number of different directions and create this like open and resilient community that is what is sort of like continuing to push this project forward. So yeah, looking forward to this discussion.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we can before we make a quick round of hellos and also introduction. I want to hear Greg's thoughts on Atom's positioning, all these kind of things. But if you guys are in Denver right now, hit us up. I think besides Jack, like Jack, you're supposed to be here right now with us. Zaki and Greg, we're all in Denver. So if you're here, let's meet up at a conference tonight. Actually, I think there's a Web3 kind of like event. We're also Injective and Osmosis is part of. And then on Saturday, on the 19th, we will have a Cosmoverse meetup. So for everybody that was in Lisbon, you guys already know the crew. But if you're new to Cosmos, join us. We'll announce the venue and the time and date, everything today. So yeah, Greg, maybe we can start first with you. Thanks for joining. How's everything going on your side?
Great. And I'm here at ETH Denver, but most of the conversations I've been having with people is about sovereignty and scalability. And I think general conclusion is like shared state doesn't scale. Sovereign state is the end state. So very exciting to hear that. Well, if you ask me, Cosmos is positioning really well. I mean, ETH is positioning for Cosmos, I think.
Yeah, I think usually we always start this show with asking, I mean, Zaki has already been on a couple of times, so we know your views already. But just like from your perspective, I think you have been an Atom proponent and bull for a while now. What are your thoughts on how the Cosmos Hub as a sovereign chain within the broader Cosmos ecosystem is positioned? Where do you see its core like value proposition? And also the purpose of Atom as a coin in that system. Greg, could you hear that or?
Yeah, where I see Atom Cosmos Hub as the core. I mean, it's the Atom is the reserve currency of Cosmos, right? And the promise of the Cosmos Hub is to really, I mean, Cosmos in general is to, have sovereignty. And that's one of the big reasons why Akash Network adopted the Cosmos SDK. the sovereignty and the independence, so we don't have to inherit the economic burden, and we have sovereignty when it comes to scalability and whatnot. So it's a phenomenal model. Now, Cosmos Hub, which is the connectivity layer, or supposedly, uh, if you look at what value prop it gives you, it's really a shared. It's sort of like the agoric, right? That brings people together. I'm not a big fan of shared security in general, so I don't know where the conversation about shared security. I'll have Zaki here, chime in some notes, some points. But really, for me, liquidity and service discovery is probably one of the biggest things Cosmos Hub can bring to the ecosystem.
Nice. All right. Jack, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, as Greg knows, I'm a big fan of the service discovery thing. I think that's a really good idea.
All right, Zaki, do you have any comments and thoughts on that?
I mean, we were just on a Twitter Spaces about yesterday with Billy, the folks from Lido, Billy, Sam, the folks from Lido, it's good that to see some of the the Twitter Spaces are good because like now we're starting to see more of the teams that are working on the Cosmos Hub doing sort of public facing media, and there's this very like this whole I think what you saw from that is this whole like tortured question about like sort of the dependency graph and how of the Cosmos Hub, and how the software is actually crafted and assembled. And if you want to get into like kind of the weeds of decentralization, right? Like a big part of the weeds of decentralization for Cosmos and for Atom is that like there is no dictator with one unified vision who can just simply say like this is how we're going to cut the Gordian knot, like this is how software is going to be built. And I think on one hand, I think that should give people what that gives people is a lot of sense of the resilience of Atom, right? Is there's a lot of different people working on it. The current roadmap exists in a lot of different people's heads. There's continuous work going on, and though frequently that work has been sort of a little bit behind the scenes, and people are working to fix that now. And so I think the other piece has been like when Atom was conceived, there were no sovereign application blockchains. There was no IBC. All of these interactions were all hypothetical. And so what we are doing right now is we are using this sort of process that we have been refining over the last 2 years to sort of evolve Atom to meet the market. And it's going to be a continuous process, and it's not going to be like, hey, like one person decides Atom is going to be this. Instead, it's like this continuous negotiation between different parties, and it's frequently frustrating. But I would rather do it that way than any other way.
Zaki knows this, but Greg knows this too. Prior to shipping IBC, I think there were many people who were like, this is never going to happen. Like, this is such a crazy idea. Like, it seems like it's so far out there. And, people were kind of split between that camp and then also the, we have theorized it, therefore it is already in reality. And like, we must start building layers of abstraction on top of this. And speaking of decentralization, Zaki, something that you've been working on quite a bit lately, which is the liquid staking module. How do you think that will work to help us decentralize stake a little bit more in the validator set? There's also a number of projects looking to build on top of your work right now. I think that's a really exciting area for the hub coming up over the next couple of months.
Yeah, I mean, it is actually really like, I mean, it's kind of, we've turned a corner on this work is very palpable in the last sort of maybe like 2 weeks. One of it is the liquid staking module is effectively done, at least in terms of base primitives. And what we need is like people to ask us for stuff that it doesn't have that they want to use. I don't know if Akash wants to use it. That would be super awesome. We certainly made this available. We designed this module for basically any Cosmos SDK chain to to implement the liquid staking primitives and then participate in this liquid staking economy. One of the reasons why I think liquid staking is essential for atoms is, one, the liquidity piece is like, you don't like basically without liquid staking, there's a continuous pull between, are my atoms staked, are my atoms participating in the economy, and that is not good for being the reserve currency of the cosmos. If to be the reserve currency of the cosmos, instead, we need to have as many possible ways in which liquidity actually flows out of the cosmos and empowers and sort of fuels a rapidly growing ecosystem. So, that's one piece of why I think it's important. The other thing that's important is why I think liquid staking is so important is, I would say that like the most dire predictions of the centralization of proof of stake have not come to pass. It's not like the stake all collapsed into like three exchanges and like didn't go anywhere.
Well, the mathematical model said one validator. It was going to crush to one validator.
In sort of, again, in the most like is like everything just collapses into Binance is the only validator. Is like sort of the natural state of blockchain of a proof of stake blockchain, and you kind of saw that with prior proof of stake efforts like EOS and BitShares, where they very quickly collapsed into a small cartel of validators, and that hasn't happened on Cosmos, right? There have been really strong, really powerful forces that have kept the validator set pretty dynamic. So on the whole, it's like not the worst case scenario, but it's not. I would also say no proof of stake decentralization unless you have like one foundation that is like controls a large amount of coins and is like allocating those coins out in delegations to hundreds of validators is really achieving that much decentralization. So, and like one of the sort of things about Atom has always been is like pure form proof of stake, very little foundation influence, very little development company influence on the stake distribution. Like, let's see how this goes. And so we now have to you want to retrofit on some governance that incentivizes people to distribute their stake to a larger set of high quality validators. And the liquid staking module, the way the liquid staking module is expected to be used, will provide, I think, one of the first mechanisms for doing that. We're expecting that people will say, hey, I have my contract that mints a synthetic staked atom is going to take only this much from iqlusion, this much from, Sika, this much from, and so it'll actually, people will be like, oh, well, I can get more liquidity out of my staked atoms by like spreading out my delegation to more high quality validators. That's a good reason to do that. And that actually provides some actual pressure to decentralize the system.
Zaki, you had a really interesting tweet the other day about how sort of the ability to exit and the creation of new chains is not only sort of like helping with the Gini coefficient in Cosmos, but also helping to decentralize stake a little bit. You sort of touched on it with what you just talked about, but I think you didn't really hit it explicitly.
Yeah. Okay, so this is part of the like sort of theory of Cosmos validator decentralization. It's like, okay, so there's this. So there's like a couple of defenses that I would articulate for why picking our engineering priorities in a way that got us to, this 150-ish validator sort of baseline for Tendermint was the right order of doing things. Now, it's certainly possible to build a Tendermint with more, to improve Tendermint to support like larger numbers of validators. Like that's not an unknown engineering roadmap. But the problem is, hold on, let me just kill my Telegram. All right.
I know that feeling.
How many messaging services do I possibly have? All right. There needs to be like a thing that you can hit that like just like kills all your notifications. Let me see if this actually works. Okay. So okay, so let's say why 150 validators? Why 150 validators is like an okay number to like for what we're doing right. One is the challenge I said about like really about like incentivizing stake to be widely distributed, right? Two, we're still probably in the world where there's like on the order of like 500 to 1,000 like actual validator operators in like the entire blockchain space running on all the blockchains. Like when we say like, oh, we're going to be decentralized, there's like really on that magnitude of independent, like independent mature entities that are providing validation services, and it's like growing steadily. But like if your network wants to support a million, 10, 100,000 or a million, there's no one on the demand supply side to supply 100,000 unique Sybil resistant entities. So that would also be another reason why not prioritizing. But one of the things that is a real concern is like, hey, is there too much of a barrier to entry? Like, as a validator who wants to become sort of a player in the Cosmos ecosystem, can you not get delegation? Cannot you not build a name for yourself because you need to get hundreds of thousands of dollars of delegation in order to like even just show up on the validator list. And that was a real challenge in the early days. But one of the things that would be one of the things that I think is like sort of a big priority there is now that IBC is live, you see a lot of validators starting out on new chains that are launching instead of starting out on the Cosmos Hub, and that gives a very nice opportunity to sort of enter the like validator business for lots of new validators. And so as a result, you've seen a lot more dynamism in like the validator sets across many chains, across who becomes well known as a validator, the validator brands that exist, and sort of that means the system is working as intended.
So, I have a question about liquid staking. Sorry for my ignorance. So, what do you think is the difference between the sort of other projects happening, right? You have Superfluid staking, you have liquid staking that you're working on, and you have Pstake. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah.
Or you say how are these different? And second question, well, if we do liquid staking for Akash, will that anyway impede with Superfluid staking or Pstake, or doesn't make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I would say that like I'll say I'll put this in a couple of things. Like let's compare liquid staking and superfluid staking. Both of these systems are designed to try to solve for the world where you have yield from staking and yield from DeFi, and they're competing against each other. Now, superfluid staking, just to like summarize for anyone who kind of doesn't know, is the idea of instead of staking Osmo, Osmosis is the first project at least that's going to use this strategy. Instead of staking Osmo directly, like right now, if you're an Osmo participant, you get your Osmo rewards and you have to decide. It's like, do I go back into an Osmo pool, like an LP pool, or do I go into or do I stake my Osmo? For some of the big pools, like the staking reward APR and the rewards for being in the Osmo, like the Osmo Atom pool, are actually pretty similar to each other. So now you have to choose. And this is like not good for Osmosis because it's pulling liquidity that could be in providing liquidity for trades out of the trading pools, and it's like not good for the economy. And so, how do you align security? This is what superfluid staking is solving for, and it works really well in an environment in which you have DeFi primitives like deeply integrated into the application, like into the consensus layer of the chain. They have this terrible name thing called interfluid staking that I'm not going to try and explain, where it's like, your other chain can now incentivize people to contribute to osmosis liquidity while simultaneously having those coins contributing to economic security. It's another way of like having your cake and eating it too. But you know, interfluid staking sort of assumes like sort of the Osmo vision of like one liquidity, sort of one like black hole of liquidity at the center of Cosmos, that like everything else kind of like, you know, the structure of a galaxy, about, you know, how Sagittarius A like kind of gives structure to the whole Milky Way galaxy. It's this like giant mega black hole in the center. Like, I think that's like kind of the vision that like pervades the osmosis worldview. Liquid staking is really for a different worldview, which is, hey, like we think that there's going to be like we want people to stake, we want value at stake, we need economic security of our application. But we think our token, like really what it wants to do is go out and explore. I think that's a way better name, Josh. Hyperfluid staking. Holy shit, yes. Much better. It sounds less like a sex act. The flip side of this is so liquid stake. The liquid staking module is basically for, hey, we want our token to actually like flow out, interact with DeFi like over the wider interchain ecosystem. We think that there is this like natural sort of ecosystem that exists around our coin, and so it's kind of like, you know, like if like the metaphor I would give is superfluid staking is about a black hole, and the liquid staking module is about a supernova. That would be.
You can understand if I stake and I get back some sort of a contract that's liquid, I can pass that around.
Yeah, you can take that anywhere and start interacting with DeFi contracts, all like that are going to use that in this like wider ecosystem, and you get these like layers built on top of it.
Got it.
This is this now. How does this interact with Pstake? I think Pstake is like the right idea, right? It's the idea that we want, that like I've been pushing for, which is, you know, you have this DAO, it provides governance, it incentivizes staking with certain validators. The problem with Pstake is that it requires you to unbond your atoms, move them into this like machinery that Pstake has set up, and that like at the other end you get like a P atom, which is, I'd say, you know, in a world where, you know, 60-something% of atoms are bonded, like, and like mostly the atoms that are not bonded are either people like holding liquidity with the plan of deploying it in DeFi, or actually hold it, or it's already deployed in DeFi. There isn't really a lot of scope there. What you really want to do is tap into the liquidity of the already bonded atoms. And that's where the liquid staking module, and like honestly, like I'm just like sort of waiting for the Pstake team to show up in the liquid staking module conversation, because like the liquid staking module is designed to be a huge accelerator for them too. Now it brings more competition because, you know, brings Lido, and Notional is working on something, and Joe is working on something with Quicksilver. Like it brings more competition, but also that like my core view, like this has been a real change in my views over the last like maybe like 3 years of thinking about this, which like the original idea was like, we're going to pick one way in which liquid staked atoms gets turned into like synthetic assets. And like now I'm like, there must be a marketplace, there must be competition. And like Lido agrees with me and Quicksilver agrees with me that there must be competition in your network in order for this to be healthy, so that the market can discover what like the right way, what the best assets are going to be.
Yet another vector for decentralizing things.
One reason I think that, like, you know, for instance, it would be great to have the liquid staking module on Akash is, you know, Quicksilver could, what I'm hoping someone will do is actually, instead of building just staked atom, there will also be like a synthetic, like IBC ETF asset, a staked IBC ETF kind of asset, where you're getting yields from like many different Cosmos chains that all implement the liquid staking module. And I'm hoping that exists. And then the market has to decide, would people prefer that as the reserve currency, or will people preserve the staked atom as the reserve currency?
Makes sense. So the big difference between Pstake and liquid staking is liquid staking, the projects need to include the module, and that gives you the staking derivatives.
But it's like anyone who's staked can just like send a transaction,
right,
and get liquid staked asset. They don't have to like unbond and like go use a bunch of machinery.
So it's a three week unbonding for AKT, right? 21 days.
So with liquid staking, you don't have that wait period.
Yeah.
Actually, the stake contract is liquid, and you can
I mean, one of my current hobby horses in general in Cosmos is I'm working on a bunch of projects to like just basically make this unbonding period now not a thing. I think we can pretty much get rid of it in the next year.
Oh, why would we want to do that?
Well, I mean, so okay, let me actually go a little deeper on
Please.
this one.
Yeah, I'm interested in this
very
one.
much in like any Cosmos circles. So I'm an advisor to a project called Babylon Chain, which is sort of been in stealth mode for a while as a team out of Stanford. They basically want to merge mine Cosmos SDK chains with Bitcoin. And so like a big idea about like why this is an amazing idea, but like basically the reason why we have these like, the reason why we have this like multi-week unbonding period is for data availability, to be like, oh, if you attacked the consensus, like we have a long time to like discover that you've attacked it. And you can actually use the Bitcoin miners through Babylon Chain to like actually mitigate against this, to like basically have the Bitcoin miners attest that like the only valid consensus messages are the ones that they've seen, and so you can't really withhold data anymore. So this is like one thing I'm working on here. Liquid staking is another thing I'm working on, and then my galaxy brain thing is I want us to eventually move in the Cosmos SDK to like variable length bonding periods where you can bond for longer for more governance.
This was something Greg had implemented in the initial version of Akash, funny enough.
Yeah, you had higher voting power if you had longer staking.
Yeah, I think that should also be. So like the baseline, the minimum you need to participate in economic security could go down to like a day. And then like you should be able to get more voting power for bonding.
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the things that I do like about the unbonding period is that it kind of incentivizes more long-term participation. Definitely the right way to do that is that sort of variable unbonding period thing, because different people want to participate in the network for different timeframes, and we should sort of weight that differently. I think a lot of this sort of quadratic voting work would be interesting there as well.
I had another interesting question. What do you think? I mean, there's this thought floating around between people as Bitcoin as a master, the thought that there should be only one proof of work chain, and that should be Bitcoin, and everything else should be a layer 2.
I mean, proof of work, people want to talk about how proof of stake sort of naturally coalesces into a single validator. Proof of work has even stronger sort of arms race-like incentives to have a single proof of work chain.
So
I've kind of always thought that's the case.
There are only really 3 blockchains that I can think of that really can work as a proof of work chain. Like if you think of like the theoretical design constraints around them, which is Bitcoin, Monero, and Aleo. And like these are like my like 3 blockchains that like can probably like the problem space that they operate in is proof of work friendly. Like if you want smart contracts, if you want a lot of interop, all of those things are like core to what you do. Proof of work really, like MEV is fatal to proof of work, right? You need to have a near zero MEV environment, and like Bitcoin achieves that by like severely constraining programmability, and Monero and Aleo sort of constrain that through privacy. But like outside of those 3 blockchains, I can't really think of a blockchain that I expect to be still proof of work in 5 years.
How would you say? I mean, obviously, like a lot of like Bitcoin maxis, I would say, or even like fanatics, they say Bitcoin is the only decentralized network out there. Everything else is a borderline scam because it's centralized. Proof of stake is a scam. What would be, maybe you guys can like talk a little bit about in general the concepts of decentralization between both networks, and do you think like in the long term proof of stake is going to be with the right incentives kind of like able to be decentralized enough to prove the Bitcoin maxis wrong in that sense? What do you think about that?
I think that I honestly, I think the answer to the, most of the objections to proof of stake that I see people floating around are just like ignorance of Cosmos. Like it's like literally like, it's like you see, you see various people tweeting these long tweet threads where they like assault proof of work for a while, and then they're like, proof of stake can never work because BitShare.
It's terrible.
And it's like, hi, Cosmos, we exist. We are everything. Like your whole thing that like you say can't exist, which is a low barrier to entry, like free open innovation, multi-stakeholder ecosystem that is like censorship resistant and all of these things. Like, and like these things all exist. Like Cosmos is a completely fully instantiated demonstration that like all of this exists, is possible, is running at scale. So I don't, I think mostly the answer to the question is like time. Like the longer Cosmos exists and just like continues to grow, the harder it will be to argue these things. I think people tend to focus on, for people who are not deep in this space, they tend to focus, and like, the Bitcoin maximalists, their whole thing is like ignoring basically anything outside of the top 10 market cap. And so, if you aggregate all the Cosmos chains together, we're like 10% of the crypto market cap. But like from the point of view of like a Bitcoin market maximalist, like you're like, oh, but like I don't see all these coins like in the top 10 and I don't know about anything else. So
yeah,
they will see it soon. They will see it soon.
I don't think they see it until we're like a greater percentage
point,
of the crypto market. But
it's like your loss. It's like there's a thing, it's highly value aligned with you, and if you don't want to invest in it, like that's your problem.
You're missing out. So earlier you talked a little bit about the validator structure in Atom and Cosmos and a lot of other Cosmos chains. Do you guys think that 150 right now on the hub, and I think like an average we have like, I would say like between 50 and 75, I think on most chains. I don't know how many on Akash are right now.
Akash is 100 now.
100?
Right.
Okay.
60 others in
like, do you think like that's a good number? That's a good enough number to be decentralized? And maybe you can compare it also to something like Ethereum 2 that is launching. I think they will have thousands of validators. Like how does that compare? My question is how does that affect the decentralization of the chain? Like, does it have a big impact, that number, just that like validators, or is there more to it?
How to trigger Cosmos researchers? Tell them that Ethereum has thousands of validators. The reality is each validator on Ethereum can only have 32 Ethereum on top of it. So what ends up happening is these organizations just spin up a ton of them. So like, while like there are technically a ton of validators on the network, logically there's many, many fewer. And if we talk about the amount of stake centralization that's going on with Lido, that's even fewer. So I would be really interested to see what the number of entities are that control 1/3 and 2/3 of stake on the Ethereum 2 network. I bet it would compare pretty much 1-to-1 with what we have on Cosmos, and we might actually be doing better. I could be wrong on that. Zaki, have you looked at those stats lately?
I mean, I haven't looked at them lately, but like Binance and Kraken, I think themselves are like 30% of the block production. I think Lido is up in the high teens just by itself. Coinbase has been like very quiet about what they're doing, but is a big chunk of ETH2 block production as well. So there's a
if Binance and Kraken are 30%, that's probably there's 3 validator companies that control 33% of stake. So for folks who just who don't know, I know everyone on this call probably does. In proof of stake, you need 1/3 for liveness and 2/3 for safety. So if 1/3 of the validator set decides to start censoring transactions, they can censor transactions. And if there's 2/3 of the validator set, then they can sort of rewrite state. So what you would consider a 51% attack. So one way to measure decentralization in proof of stake networks is to look at the number of actors that are able to censor and then rewrite. So in the Cosmos Hub right now, it would require the top 7 validators colluding to censor transactions. And then it looks like the top 22 validators to rewrite the blockchain. So that's pretty good. There's that's actually gotten better since the network launched. I think we'll continue to see that increase. I think the liquid staking work that Zaki's doing has the potential to also increase that number of actors as well. But E2 sounds to be a little bit more centralized.
I would say that we are getting towards a world where 150 is no longer sufficient. We're not yet at that world where but let's say liquid staking does really pan out. And we're actually starting to put there's strong incentives now to delegate into sort of the long tail of validators. And in that world now you might end up in a place where 150 you would want it to be more like 500. And there's certainly engineering work that has to be done there to get to that place. But but that can be prioritized.
Meiston.
I think didn't the OmniFlix chain in one of their testnets have over 700?
Yeah, their block times are 10 minutes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So just one of the other things with trade-offs here and why Zaki is saying there's more work to be done. When you increase the number of validators, there's a lot of communication that has to happen among the validators to produce blocks. So the overhead of that communication is n squared. So as the number of validators go up, the amount of communication that's required goes up exponentially. So, there's a lot of performance work that needs to be done to make, larger validator sets like that actually perform it. I think with sub 10-second blocks, you could probably run around 200 to 300 validators right now, globally distributed. That would be tough. There's some work that Zaki and the Sommelier team are working on right now with Meiston, who's a number of folks who used to work on the Facebook Libra code base, DM actually, sorry, code base, who are starting to do some work on Tendermint mempool design. This should significantly help speed up block production. And there's a couple of other improvements, things like the inclusion of libp2p, a standardized peer-to-peer layer for Tendermint. That I think is coming out in the 0.36 release of Tendermint. Between those two improvements, as well as a few other things, there's a lot of work happening in the relayer community on single node performance that also should help these block times. We should see the ability to make much larger validator sets using just sort of vanilla Tendermint here within the next 6 to 12 months. So those are some of the really exciting things that are coming that are going to help with this exact issue.
I want to dive into a little bit with number of nodes versus decentralization. Does it matter? Does number of nodes matter, or does the distribution of the voting power across different wallets matter? What do you think, Zaki?
It's the distribution that matters. I mean, I think this comes down to what are the question? I kind of wanted to I'm going to hijack your question a little bit, which is, why do we care about decentralization? Why is decentralization even important in blockchains? And so what I would say, there's a bunch of reasons why I think decentralization is an important means to an end. Decentralization and consensus is all about settlement assurance. Basically, how do you what is the assurance against reversion, disruption to your how many parties that have to collude? Also, there are forging IBC packet attacks that are relevant to users of the chain. And those are the kinds of things that are really like why you care about. And so like, you know, having a lot of skin in the game from validators and having a validator set that, you know, is like widely exposed to the ecosystem, you know, has a lot of reputation, whether or not they're anonymous or doxed. You know, those things like really matter for settlement assurance for users. And like, you know, I think we have like, that's the first thing that like really, that's like one aspect of decentralization that matters. But other things that matter for decentralization is really like, you know, number of eyes on the code, like number of different entities that are sort of shaping the roadmap. Like it's really like, you know, really communicating to builders sort of that there is going to be strong assurances of development going to continue, that there will you know, that this project will sort of will always find a way to recover from sort of any sort of catastrophe. Those things also matter. You know, settlement assurance sort of matters in the world where the software is frozen, but no software is ever frozen. Software is going to have to continuously evolve. And it does matter that like what the development process looks like, and you know what would need to happen for that development process to stop.
I mean, if anything, Secret Network is a great example. I mean, what they went through as Enigma that got shut down effectively by regulatory action and came back as a new chain with the same code base, but the community was still strong. Like to extend Zaki's answer, I think decentralization is just not about coin distribution, but it's also community participation, right? Like more often than not, we just look at technology and number of nodes or versus TPS bullshit like that, but ultimately it comes down to continuity of operations.
And I think the validator topic is also a great transition, and something that Greg, you can share more insights on, because most of the validator infrastructure still relies on Web 2, right? Like you have to run the server and you have to run the software there, and mostly you do it through Google Cloud, AWS, and all these kind of like centralized companies, right? And if they have outages or if they go down, basically your validator goes down, and you know it affects the security of the chain. So can you talk a little bit about this, what you guys are doing with Akash and how that benefits the kind of like security and validator infrastructure, especially for Cosmos chains?
So I mean, I think everything should run on Akash, but in reality, Akash has some really good software that makes validator operations easy, Akash Omnibus and whatnot, but Akash fundamentally is much lower level, right? It's very primitive in the sense it's a container runtime. It's a compute marketplace that you can acquire compute for lower cost in a fully permissionless and open way, right? But if you want to run validators, you still need to put in the work on top, right? From a manageability standpoint. So the right now the landscape, I mean, I truly believe all the applications, I mean, especially decentralized applications, should run on a decentralized cloud. Just don't run on Amazon. I mean, run on anything else, right? And they should run effectively in a manner where they're much more tolerant to adversarial conditions, right? So if a lot of nodes are running on Amazon shutting you down could affect the security of the network. But rather, if you have nodes running elsewhere, you're okay, right? So Akash is a great place because it's a marketplace that lets you get to these cloud-grade data centers in a very frictionless way, right? So I think that's the advantage Akash provides. And also cost perspective, it's like 90% cheaper than Azure and like 80% cheaper than Amazon. So why wouldn't you, right? And now you have other manageability features where you have like some sort of a DDoS protection, where you have, if your RPC server or whatever is getting like DDoS, I mean, you can sort of like, respawn that workload pretty easily on a network. But increasingly, we're seeing cloud-based, Coinbase Cloud getting in pretty aggressively with a lot of Cosmos chains, which is great because Coinbase Cloud, again, they offer a lot more services Akash can offer because they're fully custodial, right? So I don't think, I definitely think infrastructure, especially decentralized infrastructure, should be decentralized as much as possible. But and Akash provides these guardrails where you can actually spread your workloads across different clouds. So the choice is yours, essentially.
I think,
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I do think that there is going to be increasing regulatory pressure on front ends. Front ends are kind of the thing that regulators understand. And I think Akash's story as a host of front ends and analytics layers, I think maybe an even more important story than validator nodes. I think from a regulatory point of view, like I would say that regulators maybe are still figuring out validators, and like don't consider and like maybe don't understand them well enough to prioritize them, but also view them as currently kind of not hugely a natural target. Whereas front ends and ETL layers and data layers are clearly sort of in the line of sight. And so we as an ecosystem really need to create an environment which we really like. I mean, like the less we look like Web 2 and the less we look like fintech, and the more like this idea of having a settlement layer that is open and that like many things can talk to, the more it's like tangible, the stronger that we will be from a regulatory point of view. This is a preview of my Ethan.
100%. I think I should, before regulatory action, we should be more worried about browsers blocking URLs. See what's happening with Skynet, for example, Saya. Chrome blocks 80% of Saya's URLs. Most of Europe, you can't even access Saya's URLs. Most of in Gmail, if you put a Saya link, it'll go away. Twitter will block it. I think you're going to see a lot of that come by. But in DeFi, so it's very important. For us to like decentralize and I think from a Saya's standpoint, they did make a mistake of using TLDs, reusing TLDs, right? With Akash, we're moving that away. We're sort of like getting unique IP addresses, right? So there are a lot of new features that allows for further decentralization, further protection from your traditional, decentralized hosting solutions today. But to Zaki's point, yeah, I mean, the first touch point being TLDs, they should go away. And some of the cool ideas that we thought about was maybe the wallets themselves should have provisioning of UIs directly. I mean, Kepler, there's no reason why you shouldn't launch a Osmosis UI directly from Kepler that's fully dedicated to you, and an RPC server that it's fully dedicated to you and it works for you. Maybe even a validator node if you want that level of like sovereignty, right? A full stack DeFi layer. Say you're a fund and you're trading, you want your own cost model, right? You should be able to launch that directly from your Kepler wallet, and that's the ultimate decentralization, where the user ultimately is responsible for the UI, right? And the company doesn't operate any UIs, right? And Akash provides you the runtime, for your container, where you don't need to have Dockers or whatever running on your computer.
Ghazni is asking if there's already a one-click WordPress install for Akash, and if you can host a website on Akash. How does that work?
I love the profile picture, Ghazni. But there is one. There is a application called Akash Analytics. I can go there. There's a UI. You can have a WordPress installed directly from the UI. Click. You're good to go.
Nice. Yeah, Ghazni is our meme master in Cosmos. He's doing a lot of memes there.
Oh, well, that's good. We need more meme masters.
Yeah, but still had this idea. We need to have like a meme marketplace, maybe on Stargaze or somewhere. We can like upvote our memes to each other, and like I think memes are a great way that drags in more eyeballs into the entire ecosystem. But I feel like, especially over the past few weeks and months, like Cosmos has gained so much traction, and the whole community, like you were saying earlier, Greg, like the community eventually is what really matters when it comes down, right? How committed are they? And like in the case of Enigma and Secret, but I feel like in Cosmos, it's one of the most, maybe the most kind of like dedicated, like excited, most curious community. And we have 150 people right now listening to this, right? Like that alone is a sign like, hey, these guys are like, they want to learn. They're not just here to like make money. And sure, you can, invest in cryptos and Cosmos coins and you get all these airdrops and that's all cool. But to really learn about these things, I think that really matters after all.
And we got to remember all the airdrops and all the fancy APIs are short term, right? And they all eventually become sustainable, right? What happens when those airdrops and the APIs drop? It's really the tech and the community around tech. And I like the Cosmos story because, like, it's the technology and the progress that we all come together, right? Like the reason why Akash chose Cosmos in the first place is because we looked at the GitHub and we saw progress, right? And we liked the tech, right? There was no community even for Cosmos in 2017, 2018 when Tendermint was around, right? And the bond was because of technology, and that still is today, which is what I think is going to be the reason why we're going to win eventually.
Cosmos, we win slowly.
Yeah. You come for the airdrop, you stay for IBC.
Slow as what is it? Slow as smooth, smooth as fast. It's the acceleration that matters, not the absolute speed.
You never see a chain migrate from Ethereum, from Cosmos to Ethereum, but
it is true. It's like, no one has ever, like kind of gone far down the Cosmos rabbit hole and then like left. I mean, like the Injective team has like rewrote their stack like 3 times, right? They were initially an ABCI app, then they were like an Ethermint app, and then they became a Cosmos SDK app. But like through that whole journey, they never left.
I had PBS.
Yeah. Even with like all of the gore and the other conflict in Cosmos, like none of those people left Cosmos either. They just went and started their own chains.
Right.
Slow and steady wins the race ultimately, yeah. But yeah, I think also like what we talked earlier, I think the airdrops, and we see like more and more airdrops for like specific validators. I think that also helps to incentivize people and everybody to maybe spin up a new validator and get in the active set, and that's how you also increase the overall.
I'm real curious how this airdrop per validator stuff is gonna play out. I've been expecting it for a really long time. It took a lot longer than I expected to like show up as a part of the dynamic. But like I think right now is obviously a time for it. I think you're going to see so many applications launch on top of Juno and Evmos and eventually this year, and like all of the Cosmosm chains that like need token holder communities, right? So they got to come from somewhere, and a lot of validators are run by builders, and builders are going to be the natural. So I think diffusion is just like utterly very fascinating to see how that all turns out.
I saw a new validator concept recently where it was a legal validator where this person is working with the Osmosis support DAO, and in order to pay the retainer, the validator is like taking fees from delegations, and that's how they're paying the retainer on chain, which is I thought was fascinating. A use for validators that I had honestly never thought of. That was a new one on me.
Yeah, validators will be eventually DAOs, right? Like, and DAOs eventually will be composed into other functions. So I don't know. It's going to be a weird, interesting evolution, right? Like
hyper-convergent architecture, is that what they call it?
Like validators are a throw-all incentive capture mechanism. Like you want to incentivize something, it's like catch-all, right? Like, so I don't know. But that's the foundation of the proof of stake chains that actually is amazing. Like all the questions, like, oh, how do you incentivize relayers? No, you don't. You have them run validators. Incentivize the validators. So,
Strange love drop.
Oh, I was just talking to Tyler about that yesterday. Once I ship IBC queries, help ship some, we've got a lot of stuff on our plate right now. When the time is right, there will be something. We'll do something.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but maybe we'll just drop knowledge bombs on people continually. I don't. Maybe is that sufficient? I feel like people need tokens, though. I don't know. We're thinking about it. No.
Sounding like the teacher and Snoopy a good thing? I don't know.
No, I think like you're already like doing so much, and like also Zaki with what you do in iqlusion, right? So like, this should be the actual reason to like delegate to a node, like support the real builders.
You know what? The other thing that would be really nice is if someone like open sourced a bunch of code to make like doing validator airdrops easier. Because like the query code is actually is non-trivial. To like try and like how long have people been bonded to you? Like rather you want to do the simplest thing, like snapshot of whoever's delegating to you at like one instant of time, like that's easy. But if you actually wanted to like be like, hey, like we're gonna, people have been bonded to us for a long time. Some people have been some addresses have been bonded to iqlusion since Genesis, or like shortly after Genesis. It'd be great to be able to start reflecting some of that. But like there just isn't any code. Like I'd have to write all of that code, and that's like just another barrier. So if people, it would be really great to see like Osmosis open sourced a bunch of airdrop code for for liquidity providers, and that's been a huge enabler for the airdrop story. We need more.
Zaki knowledge bombs.
I wish there were more airdrops for developers contributing to Cosmos code.
I mean, the other, this is, like there's so much airdrop stuff that hasn't been written yet. Like, like,
airdrops to developers working on Cosmos code. I'm working on that with Greg. We're working on it.
Yeah,
like
there's a lot to be done.
Airdrop. Ethan Fraser gave the airdrop.
We're working. This is sort of the IBC DAO thing that I talked about on Cryptocito's show. We made a lot of progress on that over the last few weeks. I do too. We made a lot of progress on that over the last few weeks, Greg, and I should have something to announce by the end of the month. Now working with Marco at the ICF about it. We've started sort of baking cryptic tweets at this point, which is about the stage we're at. But that's going well.
As well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll definitely reach out about that. Awesome. Cryptocito, thank you again. This is a fantastic splitting atoms. 2 weeks, we got to do it again.
Love it. Yeah. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Also, like for the chat and the community, like for sharing, for being here, for asking questions. That really helps us and give us feedback. And just I think we learned a lot today. So I also have to like rewatch these things and take notes and stuff. But thanks for being here, guys. This was really cool, and we'll see everybody in 2 weeks.
I'll see most of you tonight.
Tonight, yeah.
Later.
Party.
All you eat dinner, people. I've got FOMO. All right, I'll catch you.
Take care. See you.